you get on a commuter rail during, busy time in Boston and it's packed. I mean, sometimes you have to stand on the rail. I take the rail from Cohasset into Boston every day. Well, I was, and that's a huge concern, being around everyone. And how are they gonna, essentially, what's the T gonna do to combat that? You know.
Yep. And you talk about, just the, if it's spacing people out, does that mean more, longer trains, more frequent trips, and what that's going to mean to the economics of the T, as we know, is struggling already. You have to put more employees on, more infrastructure. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
So Rich, to the point of when returning to work, Helene's question on that. So my name is Ann Blackmur. I work for Brigham Health. We have sites in Pembroke, Hingham, Situate, and Weymouth. And I work in Pembroke. Right now we're doing COVID testing and a respiratory illness clinic there. But every day, every partner's employee, we have an app. We have to take our temperature or test our good health every day. When we walk in the building, we have to show that. Everybody wears a mask and everything's disinfected. So I think that's the way it's going to be, because we are still seeing some patients in lab at the site. So it is interesting with the public transportation issues. Do people want to go into Boston? From my perspective too, they'll be looking more for ambulatory care on the South Shore, which we have at Brigham Health, so you don't have to go in the city. But Rich, to your point, I do think suburban real estate will increase in this whole social distancing. It's not a short term. So it's not a short term until we do get a vaccine. So I agree with you that there's just so many issues that we have. That's it.
Yeah, I would say another concern with that is, so if you're testing people and you're putting a thermometer on their forehead, right? They're saying that the COVID-19 virus, you get infected 14 days approximately before you show symptoms. So what happens if you're already, you've caught the virus, but you're not showing a temperature? I mean, how are they gonna, stop that?
Well, to your point, Brendan, so there's a whole list of symptoms or questions that are asked to every patient and employee. So it's not just fever. I mean, it's like, there's a whole, like loss of smell, cough, sense of loss of smell, cough, nausea. Sorry, I don't have my list in front of me, but it's asked every single patient. And if they have any symptom at all, they're turned away.
Okay.
So it's, I mean, the testing has to be done. A doctor has to, you have to have a referral for that and at Partners and Brigham Health. But there's a whole list and it's asked every day. So we attest ourselves, but then it's asked. So you have to sign it. It's a pretty serious thing. But to your point, I mean, 14 days ahead, nobody knows, but everybody at Brigham Health has a mask. So we really limit as much as we possibly can. Take a lot of precautions.
So Rich, you expect to see a lot of change in the design of offices. What about retail space? I think retailers and any services for the public that we might see in a downtown are really going to get hit hard. What do downtowns start to look like? And will developers be willing to invest in what we might call retail space in the suburbs if there isn't housing attached to it?
That's certainly a good question, and I think with the decline in bricks and mortar retail, over the last several years, and now this event that has shut down, in essence, all retailers. I think you'll find even a bigger thinning of the herd. The ones that were well capitalized and can afford a few months of no activity. They'll probably survive, but I think a lot of your smaller retailers are going to go out of business. And I think that the retail experience of the future, and you're starting to see a trend this way, it's going to be a lot more experiential. So so many people nowadays shop online, right? Whether it's for your groceries. I mean, I'm sure most of us thought we'd never shop for groceries online, and most of the people I talk to who've done that are pretty pleased with the experience. Anything else Amazon sells, I think we probably all ordered online, so that that alleviates a lot of concerns, right, with the whole spread of the virus. You don't have to go out to a physical location, but I think at the end of the day, people want to go out, they want to socialize, that they're going to want to be in environments to see other people, but it's got to be an experience that maybe is a little unique to what you can get by clicking online. And so what's the experience of the retail? Maybe it is a mixed use opportunity. I can go to a movie theater, go get a bite to eat. I can stop in, browse some clothing, or, my retail experience is, going to hit a golf ball. And, I don't know if anybody's been to a Top Golf type of facility, but, you can go and have that experience and have dinner and whatnot. Or what you see at, I don't think there's any Top Golfs in the area, but certainly that parallels to a King's, Lucky Strike Lanes, the whole experience of retail, getting out and doing something. So I think you'll see a shift to more retail experiences like that, give people something that they can't get staying at home.
Yeah. Ryan, what are you seeing? What's the seller scene in terms of construction? What are you seeing with your current projects?
Well, we pretty much have been shut out of all our projects in the whole marketplace, except a couple that are deemed necessary. We're all awaiting word from Governor Baker if it's all going to open back up on the 4th. So we're preparing all our job sites to be safety compliant. We've ordered supplies for all our job site, limited staff in the office. So we're just waiting word to figure out when it can open up. I know that Marty Walsh said Boston's going to be closed past May 4th, but he didn't really give a date when that could open up. And we do a lot of work with schools and universities. So right now we're hearing potentially June 1st from some of the major institutions, but others are just like BU, for example, they're holding off until potentially next year. So it's going to be a slowdown.
Rich, unfortunately, I got dropped through the first few minutes of this, but did you give some of the company history of the ties to the South Shore and why you own so much land down here?
I thought that's when you pulled the plug on me, Peter. I think I was in the middle of
you were
that
doing that.
spiel
I've heard this
went
story.
dark, so
You've already done it.
no. I'll certainly be happy to touch on that, because I think when we got reconnected here, a lot of people mentioned that we got cut off. I just didn't know if it was you could hit the buzzer and just eliminate the caller, but no, as I touched on, that A.W. Perry, privately held, and we've been around for quite a while. And actually, A.W. himself, Alonzo W. Perry, was a Rockland native. So he was very much involved in the community in Rockland. He actually was one of the original trustees of Chris's Bank of Rockland Trust. So they're a deep South Shore roots, for our company. But we had been Boston focused. A.W. Perry himself was actually in the shoe business, and for any of you who may be familiar with the shoe business, we were a very big shoe production area. But really, in the latter half of the 19th century, after the Civil War, all of that sort of changed, and so the shoe business in this area died out. And A.W. found that he could make a pretty good living taking his shoe factories and subletting them, as all those shoe manufacturers went out. And so that sort of got the real estate bug going in him. And so he started subleasing a lot of his buildings in Boston. And also he was really quite the entrepreneur. Back in that time, before Edison had the monopoly on electricity, he owned a number of electric generating plants in Boston. And so he sold electricity to his tenants as well. But then as his sons came into the business and, it grew over the years. But in the early 70s, the company had a chance to get invested in the ownership of South Shore Park. So we bought an interest in that property in 1970. And also at about that time, there was another Hanover-based company by the name of Lott Phillips. And Lott Phillips, they made pine boxes, not in the sense of coffins, but they had a lot of forested backland throughout the South Shore, and that company was going out of business, and we bought about 2,500 acres of raw land in the South Shore, and that really established our footprint down here, and allowed us to have development sites, and with a lot of that land where some of it wasn't zoned commercial. Over the last 30 years or so, we've taken the residentially zoned land in the portfolio and have permitted probably close to 400 housing units, from Pembroke to Hanover to Hingham and all places in between. So we've done a fair amount of residential development as well.
So was Alonzo an ancestor? Has it all been family control?
So back in the day, it was all family. Back when the annual management and directors meeting would be a bunch of guys sitting around the conference table smoking cigars and making business decisions. But there are still family involved. I'm actually part of the 5th generation to be involved with the firm. So it's a very unique story. If you follow family business histories, typically after 2 generations, those they tend to peter out. But we've been fortunate. We do have 2 5th-generation family members involved with the company right now, and Jack Spur, who preceded me as president, Jack's 4th-generation family member. So we do still have a lot of active legacy in the firm.
That's great. I see Bill and Paula Harris on. Let me put them on the spot. What are you seeing with your clients in panic with the market right now? Are people really panicking? Are they looking to move into the backwoods of Maine to get isolated? Are they making any real changes in lifestyle?
So I'll give you some anecdotal evidence. For the most part, people have been relatively calm. I think they're petrified of the virus and they're not really worried about their portfolio. And then they're worried about where they're going to get toilet paper from. And then the portfolio is probably third. And obviously the market has come back some, so that there's less of it. We've seen some, and I'm going to call it the 50-year-old male is a little bit more aggressive, like seeing this as a big opportunity and taking some big swings at the market as well. So it's been pretty calm. Surprisingly, usually there's panic, but this time there's less of it.
I think a lot of people, they're good about taking the long view. Like it just came out of nowhere, so it was a surprise. So they're like, I understand, we're on the market for the long view. And then people's lives are still going on. Grandbabies are still being born. Life events are still happening. Sadly, we had a client pass away 2 weeks ago from cancer. I mean, the circle of life just keeps happening. So people can't focus on finance all the time.
Bill, do you think there's more calm in the markets from an investor's point of view because of the position we were in when this happened? So in other words, the economy was chugging along, 11 years of expansion, all indicators were extremely strong through February. And the fact that investors aren't panicking, as you say, in your eyes, does that signal you're seeing a V type of recovery that once we address the concerns with the spread of the virus, that the economy is going to rebound quickly?
So today I have like 6 conference calls. I'll hear 6 different economists tell me 6 different things. I've heard V-shape, I've heard square root, I've heard W recovery, I've heard it all. The reality is no one knows. That there's just not enough economic data. So, this happened in the first quarter. The economy was fairly good. The second quarter, everyone expects it to be dismal. In the third quarter, they're expecting a recovery to start up again. I think Wall Street's pretty happy because of the infusion that the Fed has put into the marketplace. But the reality is the world has changed a little. It's going to take a couple of cycles before we really know who the winners and losers are going forward. And so again, there's just not enough economic data to really say where this thing's going right yet anyways. That's my opinion. I mean, and just for the record, we told everyone to buy toilet paper back in January.
Rich, I was curious to see, how is your brokers handling the marketplace right now? Are they getting any activity from tenants that have leases that are expiring over the next 6-7 months? Are you working out deals on current leases? What's the pulse on the commercial marketplace?
Sure. So from our brokerage affiliate, Perry CRE, they handle the A.W. Perry portfolio, but they're also out in the market representing third-party landlords, tenants, both for leasing and acquisition disposition. So they have been fortunate in that they had a couple of deals in the pipeline that in the last 30 to 45 days have been consummated. So we have done some business. There has been a fair amount of business in consultation. So in other words, there are a number of tenant clients who have reached out to landlords for rent relief, rent deferral, something to help them get over this hump. And so the brokerage wing has been doing a lot of that with their existing portfolio of clients. But really the majority of their work over this time has just been to stay in touch, with their existing clients, to let them know if they need any guidance or advice on real estate matters, that they're there, and just to try to keep the name out there and stay in contact with people. So when business does pick back up, maybe they'll be first in mind for options to represent people, because I think it's extremely difficult. Business in the pipeline, maybe something will get done, but for the most part, no one is making a longer term real estate decision, which is really an office lease, where it's going to be at this point, in time. The people who maybe were considering stuff, they've pretty much put those plans on hold. So there's not a lot of transactional business happening.
Yeah, Rich, I'll just chime in real quick. I would say there is a little bit of a disconnect from product type to product type. We are seeing, like you said, the office stuff is kind of slowed down, but it seems like the industrial demand is still there and continuing to chug along, whether it's within the A.W. Perry portfolio or our third-party clients.
So those of you who may not know Tyler is a broker who covers the South Shore for Perry CRE. So he has a pretty good pulse on the market. And on the I guess on the tenant thing, just from a landlord's perspective, we've had it's about, I would say, 10% of our portfolio existing tenants reach out to us for some type of restructuring, some type of rent relief, and we've tried to look at each situation on an individual basis, because I think everyone's situation is unique to them. The majority of our tenants in the portfolio are small businesses, so that that 10% of our existing roster hasn't been all retail. It's been some retail, but most of it are the small office tenants that we have that may be from 1,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet, who are concerned about what their cash flow is going to be and what their revenues are going to be when they've been told by the government that they can't go to work anymore. I think that the bigger concern for us as a landlord is not really the month of April, the first 30 days of this. It's going to be the next 60 to 90 days. I think you're going to find that May and June, for everyone who had their business come to a stop, maybe it was the tail end of March, but everyone pretty much had paid their April rent. But now as you get into 30, 60, 90 days of this, I think the impact is going to become a lot more dire. And it's just like anyone else running a business. As a landlord, we have a business to run as well. And we look at it as a partnership with our tenants. As I mentioned earlier in the call, we're long-term holders of our real estate. So we try to invest the right capital in the properties. So they're well-maintained assets. They're attractive to our tenants, but we have expenses just like any tenant, right? We have mortgages to pay. We've got to keep the lights on, and we've got to make sure the roof doesn't leak and the HVAC runs and all that kind of thing. So if we have a significant portion of our tenant roster tell us that, sorry, we can't pay rent, well, then that's a problem, and we're not going to be able to pay our rent or our expenses. So it's, it can be a pretty snowballing effect. So in looking again to work in that partnership with our tenants to make it a combined effort to figure out what can we do on both sides to make it work for each of us so that we'll all come out in a place where we'll be ready for the recovery and get our businesses back up to speed.
Hey, Rich, Chris Oddleifson's on. He's on mute, so I'm not sure if he's still at his desk, but Chris, are you there? Can I put you on the spot? What is Rockland Trust seeing in terms of requests for commercial forbearance or people looking for some relief on home mortgages? Have you seen a big uptick in that?
Well, if you compare it to pre-COVID, yes, I think it's an infinite percentage. On the consumer side, we've had about 1,000 people request forbearance on the home equity or their standard mortgage. On the commercial side in our CRE portfolio, well, let's see, I don't have it's about 1,000, I think, between CRE and CNI. And I think it totals about $1 billion of loans that have asked for some sort of forbearance. And it comes in two sort of options. We'll do a complete P&I forbearance for 3 months or interest only for 6 months. It was fast and furious the first couple weeks into this. It continues, but it's tailed off pretty significantly. Just as you might imagine, we have a meeting with our regulators once a week, and this is a topic they're extraordinarily interested in. Unfortunately, when we model out all the potential stresses, that we can withstand a lot of this, but so we have enough excess capital and liquidity, et cetera. But yeah, it's a infinite increase. We had like virtually zero before, and now you count it in the thousands.
So are you backstopped at all as a community bank? Do you are there federal agencies that cover you if you have $1 billion in loans and there's forbearance of a few months because of this emergency? Or do you have to just figure out how to eat up that loss of income?
Well, the latter. I mean, I mean, certainly there are some programs that are helping on some aspects. Now, specifically the PPP program, the Federal Reserve has a program in which you can pledge your PPP loans, and they'll essentially give you the 100% liquidity against those loans. So your liquidity ratios aren't impacted by the number of PPP loans you do. You also, there's some relief in terms of the regulatory capital ratios. A ratio that's very important in banking is a tangible capital ratio. That does not get relief. So when we're thinking about PPP loans, we're really restrained by our tangible capital ratio that we don't want to get below a certain percentage. But if you have to start reaching to the regulators for backstop because of bad loans, that means you're a goner. And Rockland Trust went through that in the early 90s, almost. But we never want to do that again.
But they're not necessarily bad loans. It's an emergency of a few months and people are looking for a pause because the government put the economy on pause.
Oh, well.
The regulators still say we don't,
Yeah.
we're
Well, I
not
mean,
aware of what the rest of government's doing, so we consider it a bad loan.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting distinction. Loans that are put on any sort of forbearance during this period will not be considered what we call a troubled debt restructure, or TDR, which many analysts lump into bad loans. So there is a classification relief, if you will. But in terms of liquidity and capital, I mean, if you run out of liquidity and you run out of capital, I mean, you throw yourself into the hands of the regulators as a failed institution. I mean, they're not going to say, well, because you have bad loans and nobody pays you back because of COVID, that we're going to rescue you. At least they don't have a program in place to do that yet. And I hope, and we have a lot of capital to withstand that, so I'm not really worried about that.
So I don't have to run down and open a new account at Rockland Trust to keep you afloat.
No, well, we of course we'd welcome all new accounts, and that's actually an interesting point. Banks across America are seeing deposits go right. I mean, just huge increases in deposits as people are taking liquidity and depositing at the big institutions. I mean, we're talking. Oh my gosh, there's a coyote right outside my window. Darn. Okay, well.
Not a coyote, it's a regulator, Chris.
The benefits of working at home. Where was I? I forgot. The coyote distracted me.
The big banks.
The deposits you were talking about.
Oh, yeah, the deposits are way up across the board, including at Rockland Trust.
Everyone wants to take advantage of that 0.2% interest rate. Is that what they're after?
Yes, right. Well, the PPP program, of course, I think we've so far in phase one, we lent out $700 million in like 5 days. All that money actually was deposited into a Rockland Trust DDA. So interesting sort of dynamic here in terms of deposits, loans, balance sheets are getting pretty much inflated across the board, including the Fed.
Good. South Shore Health is on the meeting as well. Can I ask Jessica what is going on at the hospital? We've heard so many stories and pressure in the ICUs and lost income everywhere else. But what's happening in South Shore Health?
Absolutely. So we're obviously very busy. We've been very busy for probably the last 4 months preparing for the influx of patients and everyone who is going to need help. So we started operating under what we call a Hicks structure. So it's a very, as Rose DiPietro says, who's our interim president and CEO, a militaristic way of operating. So we have an incident commander. They meet twice a day. They're overseeing the ins and outs of everything having to do with the hospital operations and our patients. We have been very busy. Within the last month, we've increased our ICU beds. So as many of you know, you're a part of the health system. We've worked over the last 3 years to build a new critical care unit. All of those rooms that are patient private rooms, 24 beds, they're now doubles. So that immediately increased our ICU capacity to 48. And then with the old ICU, we had renovated it completely and made it a step down unit or an intermediate care unit. And those 24 beds are now double rooms as well. As of last night at 4 p.m., we had 101 COVID positive patients in the hospital. So that means our ICU and our step down unit are completely full. And then 16 patients that are under investigation. I have to say the most heartwarming aspect of this terrible virus and what it's caused, the ripples and the travesty that it's caused is the community that has come out in full force to support the health system. So we are feeding with the help of our community, pretty much all of our colleagues every day. We have a couple of really large groups that have stepped up and made this a priority of priority of theirs. So we have food constantly coming in. The number of businesses, construction, dental, veterinary, pharmacies, big box stores that have donated items of personal protective equipment is truly extraordinary. We're up close to, we think about this in units. So one glove is considered one unit, but we're close to 300,000 pieces of PPE that people have donated to the health system. So masks, gloves, gowns, all of the high school students that have 3D printers that are home and board, and now they're making face shields for us. It's truly extraordinary. And the stories that will come out of this are just really unbelievable. And then we're also actively fundraising. The cost of this for the health system is extraordinary. And so that's been a priority of ours as well. But, the hospital is there if you need us. We do have our tent over at Union Point. We've, as of Friday, we had conducted 4,050 tests at the drive-through tent over at Union Point. So that's been a really wonderful collaboration with the town of Weymouth. They've been so supportive of that, and we've working with them has been excellent. So we're working on that as well. So I'm more than happy to try and answer any other questions that people have. It's busy. Our clinicians, my friends, our colleagues, all of the frontline workers are tired, but they are in it. And as you walk down the hallways, you realize like we are in it to care for the community, and the bravery that they have shown is just extraordinary.
Just curious, I've heard elsewhere that certainly the surge in COVID and what that's meant to stress in your operations, but the other part of the inpatient care, have you seen significant drop-offs? Like I've read how people aren't going in for routine medical care, or even if they should, whether it be a heart condition or whatever, but the inpatient stuff is off.
Yeah, the inpatient and our numbers in the emergency department have also drastically declined. And that's a real concern. It's a concern of the Massachusetts Hospital Association, MHA, and all of the hospitals within Massachusetts. People are not coming to the hospital for the care that they should. And so that is a concern. And I know that it will be, people will be nervous to come back to the hospital, but the protocols and the precautions, I mean, we had heard even just in our everyday lives and from Ann Blackmur, just in terms of having to wear, test yourselves, the temperature, the list of questions, wearing a mask, etc. Everyone coming into the hospital does wear a mask. All of our clinicians are gowned up and masked as well. So that's going to be an ongoing, we see doing that for the foreseeable future. So we are going to have to slowly transition, letting everybody in the community know that they can come back to the hospital for what they need. One of the stories that Rose had mentioned is over the last 4 weeks, we have not seen any gallbladder surgeries, and that's not normal for us in the hospital, and so that's of a concern. I think people with heart disease or heart issues and other individuals living with some of these health issues really do need to start coming back. So we've started to transition in terms of communication to the community on our social channels and in print. But and then, the economic aspect of that for the health system is extreme as well. So we do hope that people will get the care that they need in the right place. And part of the reason certainly why having South Shore Health Express as part of the health system now is important as well.
Well, I think we're coming up to the advertised 40 minutes if you back out the interruption and the restart of the meeting. Does anyone else have a question of Rich? I use these as focus groups to find out what's going on with our members and businesses, but this is a great chance to just meet some of our leaders. Anyone else have a question?
I have a question for Rich. Hey,
Go
Rich.
ahead.
Rich, do you have any plans for the rest of South Shore Park that you want to share or not?
Absolutely. So what Mary Ann's referring to, I alluded to earlier, the existing South Shore Park, and which the first building, for those who've been there, is the Orthopedic Center, coming in at 2 Pond Park Road. And that historically has been a 70s vintage light industrial manufacturing park. Some of it has been repositioned. Certainly the Bone and Muscle Center is a great example of that. But A.W. Perry owns 12 existing assets in that park, including the Bone and Muscle Center. But if you continued south along Route 3, so if you went from the Derby Street exit at 15 down to Route 228 at exit 14 where the Home Depot is, virtually all the land on the west side of the highway is A.W. Perry land. So there's about 250 acres of greenfield there. There's a number of other properties that have been developed. I had mentioned Blue Cross, Serono, BMW earlier. So some of the, well, actually with the exception of Blue Cross Blue Shield, those assets are in our portfolio as well. But over the last year or so, we've been looking at all of those holdings and master planning all of our land down there. And reflective of what you've seen in successful suburban developments, so a mixed-use type of environment. And I think what we've been trying to do is very consistent with the South Shore 2030 plan, and it's very consistent with Chris's group when he was leading the housing initiative, as far as the need for smart housing throughout the Metro Boston area. So we're looking at a combination of housing units in a variety of styles, some retail, some recreation, maybe some additional office or industry there, but knitting together the existing with new neighborhoods that we think will really create a new experience for for people on the South Shore to live, work, and play. I know that can be a tired tagline, but we think there's a need for it in that area, Route 3, and so that is something we're looking at, and a lot more to come, because anyone who's followed the Chamber's work knows that a lot of development in our area on the South Shore is contingent on infrastructure. And not just infrastructure from a transportation perspective, but infrastructure from a water and wastewater perspective. So that there's going to need to be some regional solutions, which with the Chamber and the EDC is trying to help spearhead to figure out, how do we get water and sewer down here to allow the type of growth that's going to continue to make the South Shore vibrant.
Thanks, Rich. And so a further question to that, I apologize, but do you think, given the prior conversation, that they'll be looking for suburban office space will change that landscape a little bit by at the beginning of South Shore Park? Do you have any empty spaces there that you're looking to fill? I mean, do you think that would be a slight change?
I think that's certainly a possibility. I will say that our land encompasses both Rockland and Hingham. But on the Hingham side, Hingham has put zoning overlay districts in all of the South Hingham area, and they would very much be in favor of taking one of those dated single-story 1970s vintage flex properties and seeing a 3 or 4 story office property replace that. But again, the limitations are most of those properties there now are on private septic systems. So until you can increase the capacity of the wastewater, you can't go vertical with it. But I mean, in essence, that's what we did with the Bone and Muscle Center. We took 3 small, single-story industrial buildings, demoed those, and put that site together, and we were able to make the water and wastewater work to build a 3-story, 80,000 square foot facility.
Great. Anyone else? Well, Rich, thank you. Thank you for chairing the Economic Development Corporation. Go ahead.
No, if I could, before we leave, I just wanted to make a special announcement to the group and recognize Peter as he celebrates his 39th birthday today. So happy birthday, Peter.
Now, who told you that?
It's public
Happy
knowledge.
birthday.
It's all over the
Happy
internet.
birthday.
Who told you that? Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Well, good. I should put my kids on this so they know it's my birthday.
Hey, Pete,
Yeah, it's-
how is the chamber doing through all this?
Interesting. So we're going through a few things with our own operation. Obviously, we did the remote stuff. So I'm in every day now, mostly for sanity as much as social spacing because nobody's around. Tom comes in a couple times a week. Everyone else is at home, and they've been doing a great job figuring out the virtual chamber, having programs like this. We have a number of virtual events and programming we've done with members, hitting different issues, different constituencies. So that's gone really well. We've done some cutback of hours because we're not having the traditional events. And we don't expect to have a lot of that traditional meeting events activity in any number until late fall. We don't think people will come to it. So we're expecting summer, early fall, we'll have a lot more of our smaller group events, lunches and coffees of 10 to 20 people at a time. But we are thinking about how the programming changes, the format of the programming, and then the content of the programming. We have cut back staff hours, so we've done work share program, and we actually got one of the EIDL grants from the federal government to help us. So our revenue is going to be impacted. We've started to cut down some expenses, and we have big renewal period with about 400 memberships that renew in July. So we're not sure what that's going to mean for us. The economic work is continuing. We're doing a number of things there in terms of the wastewater and transportation planning that we're starting. The member services, I think, is going to shift over the next few months. And that's why I'm particularly interested in forums like this, because I get to do a little focus group talking with smaller groups of members. But I think we're going to have to shift a lot of our focusing back to entrepreneurship, because I think there's going to be a lot of turnover of businesses, but the same business owners and professionals are going to be on the South Shore, kind of reintroducing themselves or restarting a business. So I think we have to think a little bit more about how do we help a new business get started, and then how do we help an existing growing business that is going to be set back? How do we help pull them through this? So our programming is going to focus, I think, a lot more on some traditional nuts and bolts business assistance, and how do we do peer connections, not so much for business card exchange, for business development, but for conversations of with small groups of peers. How do I get through this? How do we do that? The political advocacy is probably going to step up in a different way. I think once we reopen, there's going to be a lot of second guessing about what the government did. And there's going to be a lot of effort to reach back to businesses, try to recover money, try to fill in the blanks for a lot of these programs and how they were supposed to run. There'll be a lot of second guessing about that. That'll impact our members. There'll be a lot of pressure, I think, on businesses coming out of this that is going to require a lot more advocacy. So I think our advocacy role of a chamber of commerce or a business association is going to increase over the next year as there's political fallout from all of this and recovery. So we're doing a lot of thinking. I don't know if I have all the answers, Bill. I expect chambers will change, and this chamber will change, at least for the next couple of years, as to where some of our focus is, because our members' focus is going to change.
Thank you.
Great. Rich, thank you. Thank you all for participating. Thursday morning, we have Carol Bowman. Next Tuesday, Ken Quigley. We're scheduling, let's see, Chris Oddleifson is being scheduled. I don't know if we have that date yet. I think that's May 11th. But watch the calendar, watch the email notices. These may continue well after reopening as well. They're pretty valuable. Thanks a lot, Rich. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody. Be well.
Everyone.
Rich.
Hi, Rich. Thank you, everyone.
Everyone be safe.